Good morning. Supposed to unmute when it starts? It's going to be one of those days again. Sorry. Do you see my new overlay? Jody made that. So there she is. Thank you, Jody. A good evening to you. Or is it morning for you now? It's late for you. And Miss Gabby. Hello, associate. What up, mama? What you doing? How's my granddaughter? Other than perfect. It is dramatic and wicked. Oh, I cleaned off my desk and I couldn't find anything when I sat down. It has been the weirdest week so far, and it's only Wednesday. That's okay. We'll get through it. We will get through it. Um, we're going to do. I'm glad you. I don't know what's going to happen today. We're going to do closing arguments. I will put the closed captionings on unless they do not behave. If they don't behave, I am turning them off. We are going to finish this Oscar Martinez trial. As most of you probably know, I don't think this kid should be on trial. I think he's the wrong dude. So him, a friend Josh's three brothers, all went and we're going to meet up with Jerry Ortiz, do a little dealing back and forth, you know what I mean. Weapons ended up coming out when one of the minor brothers came out of the SUV for whatever reason. He was 14. He came around, had his weapon drawn. Jerry Ortiz drew his weapon, fired, hitting Christopher in the face. He did not survive. And then a stray round went over and hit 66-year-old Enrique Bocanegra. Got it, YouTube? Bocanegra. Hit him and unfortunately ended his life. Jerry Ortiz was 17 at the time. He is facing 0 charges. He was charged with capital unaliving. Now he has 0. This kid that is on trial, as far as I'm concerned, everybody's arrested. The state never put a weapon in his hand definitively, like said he had a weapon, he fired. Nothing. Never. Jody. I can't say that. I can't say that. If any of you don't know what happened, it happened last stream. The defense was questioning the detective, and he was saying Mr. Bocanegra's name, and YouTube picked it up wrong. I cannot say what YouTube said. I will just say it was a word, and they put the hard R at the end of it and spelled it out. So it's back in my stream. I had no control over it. No control. It was awful. I have I've continued to think about it because it's so bad. I don't want anybody to get offended and think that I did that. I had 0 control. Closed captionings are awful on this channel, or not this channel, every channel. They're awful. They generally don't even put words like bad words. There was a lot of F-bombs being dropped and being quoted. They weren't put in there. But the N-word with the bad ending was put in there very clearly. So Mr. Bocanegra's name will be said probably a lot today. If YouTube doesn't behave, I'm going to turn him off. Anyway, so Jerry Ortiz, who fired the rounds that unalived 2 people, no charges. Oscar Martinez was in the SUV. They've never even been able to prove that he set up the deal, which was kind of the state's opening, that he did this, because they never even got a hold of or asked for Jerry Ortiz's phone to check to prove what the state said of Oscar Martinez and Jerry Ortiz set this whole deal up through Instagram. Nothing was ever introduced in evidence to show that at all. Hasn't really been talked about since opening statements. So Jerry Ortiz is walking free. The driver of the SUV, Joshua, he took a plea deal and he got 20 years. Not clear if he fired any rounds or not. There were 3 weapons that were confiscated from the SUV. There was a total of 4 weapons found. Jerry Ortiz's weapon was never found. So they kind of went around about how they connected the rounds to Jerry Ortiz's weapon, but there was no DNA, there was no fingerprints, there was nothing on the weapons. So Joshua, the driver of the SUV, took a plea deal, got 20 years. The other 2 minors, who are Joshua's brothers, also had their capital unaliving charges dropped. They are out free. And Mr. Martinez is sitting here with 2 charges of unaliving, one for Christopher, who was in the SUV with him, and one for Mr. Enrique, I'm not saying his last name, who was in his house. I get the whole thing of, you were there doing a crime, something bad happens, you all get charged. But you're not charging them all. So I don't know why you're charging any if you're not charging. The detective said on the stand that when he got Mr. Ortiz's written statement, and if you heard Mr. Ortiz testify, you know he didn't write a statement. I'm not trying to be mean. The kid, he didn't know when Christmas was, or he doesn't know when Christmas is. He doesn't know when Valentine's Day is. Those 2 dates don't change. He had a hard time. I know he was nervous, kind of even forming a sentence. There's no way he did a written statement on his own. And the defense brought up that he had counsel at that time. He submitted his statement, and then all of a sudden the detective was like, oh yeah, this was self-defense. Because Christopher came out of the SUV and pulled his weapon first. The bad thing about that theory is, and the defense brought it up, is they were all there to do something illegal. So it's kind of the thing of coming to court with clean hands, and they didn't. They didn't come to court with clean hands. They were all there doing something illegal. And then the detective said, oh no, it was self-defense for Jerry Ortiz. He gets to walk for taking 2 people's lives while he was there to do something illegal, because he got the worst end of the deal, basically. He was getting robbed. So that's basically this whole case in a nutshell. So we'll hear what looks like the courtroom was full. We'll hear the closing statements. Then we will go to the verdict. The jurors deliberated a very long time. I don't know exactly how long, because Judge Boyd turned off the stream and then restarted it when they came back. So I don't know. I haven't been able to find how long exactly. It just said most of Monday. So I don't know what that means. It was a while. It was a long time. So, all right, I've got this set up to go, I hope. All right, closed captions are on. I think I have everything boosted. All the sound should be good. So, y'all let me know. Make sure. All right. So I just came in as she's done reading the jury, the instructions. Typically, most of you don't like to hear that because it's a lot of repetitive stuff. But if ever anybody wants to hear it, let me know. I'll play them.
7th District Court, Bexar County, Texas. All right, state, are you prepared to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. We as the state, we carry the burden in this case. So we get to speak to you first, we get to speak to you last. So I'm going to speak to you about some of the law that the judge just gave you and that you just read into the court, into the transcript. And then Mr. DeLeon will get the opportunity to speak to you. And then Daniel will get the last opportunity to speak to you before you go back there and deliberate. So this is a pretty lengthy document. This has all the law that you need to decide this case. And one of the first questions jurors have when they go back there, sometimes they send a note out that's like, hey, I want to see that police report that Officer Richmond was referring to. And unless it was entered into evidence, you won't have that back there. So all you're going to have back there is the evidence that was entered in this case. And I want to talk to you about the oath that you took. Part of the oath that you took as jurors is not to let bias, prejudice, or sympathy play any role in your deliberations or in the verdict that you reach. And so there's no but here. There's no, well, I believe the defendant is guilty, but I feel bad for him. And you are deciding punishment in this case. The jury is going to decide punishment in this case. And so if you feel any sympathy for the defendant, the time for that is in the punishment stage of the trial. This is right now, all y'all are to decide is guilt, innocence. So I want to talk to you about the law of parties. Daniel talked to you about this last week in jury selection. And the law of parties in the state of Texas, and it's in your jury charge, but I want to go over it with you. A person is criminally responsible for an offense committed by the conduct of another if acting with intent to promote or assist the commission of the offense, he solicits, encourages, directs, aids, or attempts to aid the person to commit the offense, and that can be before, during, or after the commission of the offense. And so what does that mean? I mean, we talked about it at jury selection, but it's the convenience store example, right? You and your buddy, you go to rob the convenience store, he's got a gun, you don't have a gun, he shoots the clerk. You're on the hook for that. That's the law of parties in the state of Texas, and that's what's in your jury charge. And so count one in this case is the felony murder of Enrique Bocanegra. And I've highlighted the important parts of this. Oscar Martinez, acting alone or together as a party with another, did then and there commit the felony offense of robbery, while in the course of commission or attempted commission or in immediate flight, did then and there commit an act clearly dangerous to human life, discharging a firearm at or in the direction of Jerry Ortiz, and thereby causing Jerry Ortiz to discharge a firearm, thereby causing the death of Enrique Bocanegra. And so the important part here is commission or attempted commission. So we heard testimony during the trial that Chris gets out of the vehicle with the gun. And you see in here and you see in the charge of the court, discharging a firearm at or in the direction of Jerry Ortiz. But it's commission or attempted commission. So once Chris gets out of that car with the gun, it doesn't matter whether he gets the shot off or not, okay? And so that's count one, the felony murder of Enrique Bocanegra. Count two, the felony murder of Christopher Mejia. And they're very similar. But Oscar is responsible for the conduct of the other people in that car that day. And I want to point out to you, in both of these counts, count one and count two, it's commission or attempted commission. And then count three is aggravated robbery. Oscar Martinez, acting alone or together as a party with another, while in the course of committing theft of property, did intentionally or knowingly threaten or place Jerry Ortiz in fear of imminent bodily injury or death. And Oscar Martinez, either acting alone or together with another, did use or exhibit a deadly weapon, to wit, a firearm. And so that's part of party language, right? So he's responsible for the other folks in that car. So the other folks in that car have a firearm. Doesn't matter whether Oscar had a firearm in his hand or not. He's responsible for their actions because of the law of parties in the state of Texas, which is in your jury charge.
Uh,
I want to talk
okay,
about accomplice
I understand.
witnesses. So what this says, this is in your charge too. You cannot convict solely on accomplice witness testimony. Accomplice testimony must be corroborated by other evidence that connects the accused to the offense. But all the law requires, this is the highlighted portion, all the law requires is that there be some non-accomplice evidence which tends to connect the accused to the commission of the offense. That's all the law requires. And so on this slide, this is all the other evidence that you had in this case. So the testimony of both the police, the CSIs, the medical examiners, Ms. Atkinson, the photos, the videos that you saw, the shell casings, the bullet that the medical examiner removed from Enrique Bocanegra, the gun.
All right. I understand what he's saying, but none of them connected that stuff to him. They didn't connect it to anybody but Jerry Ortiz. And that connection wasn't even made until the detective made it. And you about saw the state fall out of their chairs because it was like, an oh crap moment. You weren't supposed to say that. Because their investigators that he just all got done naming, there was one round, the one that took Mr. Enrique's life, that they said they could not match to any of the weapons that they had recovered from the scene. Old detective gets up there and he's like, oh yeah, that came from Jerry Ortiz's weapon that you never recovered. And then the defense asked how he knew that, and he explained how he knew that. And yeah, they have not connect other than him being in the SUV. That's the connection they have. Good night, Jody. Get some rest. Lurk away. Stay warm. I know it's cold there. I'm sorry for that. But so if you didn't see the testimony from the other day, that was that day, they bring in the medical examiner. He shows all these horrible pictures of Christopher, Mr. Enrique. He showed, and to me that was for shock and to get to the jury. Like he just said, you saw all the rounds. Well, he didn't do any of it. He's maintained that through all his interrogation with the detective. He maintained, I didn't know that was going to happen. I wasn't there to rob anybody. I wasn't there for that. I didn't know that's what they were going to do. I did not do that. He has maintained that. So to me, right now, all they have is he was in the car. Because nothing else has linked him to this at all. Oh, Lord. Look, they got Mr. Bocanegra's name right. Yes. Woo. They got it right. They got it right. All right. I don't know. It's a weak argument to me, but I understand the law, the party, he was there. Oh, I understand I get it.
Guns, the forensic testimony, the diagrams, the documents, and the scientific reports. These are all separate and apart from any accomplice witness testimony in this case. And while we're talking about testimony, I do want to talk to you about a couple of the witnesses. We had to bring Christopher's mother here to testify, and we had to bring Enrique's daughter here to testify. And those were very brief witnesses. And I just want to tell you the purpose of that is one of the things we have to prove is that these people died. And so I know that was difficult, and we tried to make that as brief as possible. But I wanted to tell you the purpose of that is we have to bring those witnesses to say, this is my family member, this is my loved one, and they're dead. But the purpose of that was for their identification. So this is in your charge. This is defense is excluded. And the actor may be convicted on proof of commission of the offense and that he was a party to its commission. And it's no defense that the person for whose conduct the actor is criminally responsible for has been acquitted, has not been prosecuted or convicted, has been convicted of a different offense, or is immune from prosecution. So that's the law in the state of Texas. Oscar can't hide behind, well, hey, wait, this other guy didn't get prosecuted, or somebody else, there were a couple juveniles in the car. They were held to a different standard than I was. You can't hide behind that. You can't use that as a shield. And on that same note, I want to talk to you about witness credibility. It's in the jury charge. Y'all, as the jury, are the judges of the credibility of each and every witness. So you get to judge the credibility of the police witnesses, the CSIs, the medical examiners, and you're also the judge of the credibility of Jeremy and Jerry. And I don't expect you to love the way they testify or to love the choices that they made in this case. But I want to remind you that Jeremy and Jerry are not on trial here. Oscar Martinez is on trial. We're asking you to use your common sense when you're back there deliberating. We're asking you to remember the testimony that you heard, to examine these videos, photos again, look at all the evidence that was brought forth, and to hold the defendant responsible and accountable. We're asking you to hold Oscar Martinez responsible for his actions and accountable for his actions. We're asking you to find Oscar Martinez guilty of the murder of Enrique Bocanegra, guilty of the murder of Christopher Mejia, and guilty of aggravated robbery. Thank you. Your Honor, I reserve the rest of our time.
Good morning, Christine. How you doing today? All right, defense is going to have to bring something here. Oh, good. Stuff we can't see.
Yeah, proceed, Your Honor.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Oscar, Oscar's family, and myself, I want to thank you for your service as jurors. We know that you're taking this case very seriously, and this is a very serious and important case to Oscar and his family. The state of Texas has the burden in this case to prove this case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. The state has not proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. In jury selection, we talked about many things, but you came into jury selection. We found out this was going to be a murder case. We said, or at least I said, keep an open mind here. And when this case started last week, you probably had an idea, well, this case is probably about this. But now, 1 week later, you have all the facts in the case. This case was not what you thought it was going to be, okay? Let's deal with what we know, not with what we don't know. What we know is that Oscar Martinez did not murder anyone. Factually, he did not murder anyone. We know that Oscar Martinez, there's no evidence that he ever handled a firearm. All right? No evidence he shot a firearm. His fingerprints are not on any weapons. His actions show he stayed at the scene. He didn't flee. He called his mother on the phone when he was at the scene. And I'll rephrase that. This 19-year-old kid, I'm going to call him a kid, even though he's legally an adult. This 19-year-old kid called his mommy on the phone when he got in trouble. And seeing his friend dead on the ground out there in a gunfight that happened, yeah, he was scared to death, but he still stayed at the scene. He did not put the guns in the blue recycle bin. That wasn't him. And he answered police officers' questions at the scene. You saw the body cam of the officer, and he gave his name, address, started saying what was going on. He told Detective Morales in that interview that Christopher and Joshua came up with this plan to take Jerry Ortiz's marijuana. All right? That's what it boiled down to. In the videos, you'll see in the video, when Christopher Mejia got out with that gun, Oscar did not follow him. Why? Because Oscar had no clue Christopher Mejia was going to get out of the truck with a gun in his hand. He had no clue that was going to happen. Oscar didn't drive the truck forward. He was helping Joshua, who had been shot. And you see him twice go up to Christopher. And there's different videos out there. You see him twice go to Christopher and touch him while he's on the ground, trying to assess. And if you look at Christopher, you're probably thinking at the time, this is not good. He doesn't look alive. But there's twice where Oscar touched Christopher. We talked about in jury selection, teenagers make mistakes, all right? And in this particular case, Oscar made a huge mistake because he was hanging with the wrong crowd. The Mejia brothers, the 4 Mejia brothers. He was hanging with them. And if you hang with the Mejia brothers, you're going to end up in trouble, all right? The Mejia brothers had guns on them. We know that now. The Mejia brothers had weed on them. The Mejia brothers had contacts. You know, someone who sells marijuana, hence Jerry Ortiz. Joshua and Christopher Mejia thought that this would be a good idea. Now, the burden to prove. The state has the burden to prove this case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. We talked about that many times in jury selection. The defense doesn't have to prove anything to you. We did bring some evidence forward to you in the form of the defense exhibits 1 through 6. Beyond a reasonable doubt. We talked about the highest standard out there that the state has to prove to you. Now, in the jury charge, we do want you to focus on the elements in counts 1, 2, and 3. Evidence to prove it to you beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, maybe, could have, possibly, more than likely, built in those phrases is doubt, because it's not for sure. All right, possibly, maybe, could have. That's not enough. All right, and the state is asking you to guess on a lot of these different elements. All right, remember, we'll come back to that in a second. But you all agreed you would hold the state to their burden of proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt. So, law of parties, essentially, they need to prove that a felony occurred and that a death occurred during that felony, and then you have felony murder at that point. So, credibility of the witnesses. You're the exclusive judges of the credibility of the witnesses and the weight to be given their testimony. As you know, Judge Boyd handles the law. The 12 of you are judges of the facts. All right? You determine what the facts are. With law of parties, as you see in the jury charge on page 6, and you'll have a copy of this back there in the jury room with you. On law of parties, mere presence alone will not make a person a party to an offense. All right? You heard Detective Morales say that as well. Mere presence alone is not enough. Just because he's hanging with the wrong crowd is not enough to get him convicted of aggravated robbery or felony murder. All right? You need more than that. And if you look at, I kind of summarize it, need a plan or a scheme or something, but here, it states right here that acting with intent to promote or assist the commission of the offense, the state alleges that's aggravated robbery, Oscar solicits, encourages, directs, aids, or attempts to aid the other person to commit the offense. All right? With Oscar, is there any evidence that Oscar solicited this drug transaction to go through? No, there's no evidence. In fact, we know from Jerry Ortiz, he says that Joshua Mejia, the driver, I recognize him from his Instagram photo. We were talking on Instagram to set up a meeting to buy this marijuana. All right? That's not Oscar. Encourages. Is there any evidence Oscar encouraged anyone to do this aggravated robbery? None. All right? Directs. There was no. Jerry Ortiz stated specifically, and I'll go through it again. He never said, Oscar said, do this. Oscar told others to do that. Never happened. Aids or attempts to aid. Once again, where's the evidence that Oscar did any of that? It's not there. So, remember in jury selection how we talked about all these hypotheticals and convenience stores and things like that? The consensus was this is a gray area. It all depends, right? Facts matter. Evidence matters. And now that you have all the facts, all the evidence, it's your time to judge those facts. All right? So what evidence is there that Oscar knew about the plan to commit the robbery? All right? He was there, but Detective Morales told you, mere presence alone is not enough. He overheard this plan by Joshua and Christopher right before it happened. All right, they were at the gas pumps for about a minute and 15 seconds. All right, and then they moved over and drove up to where Jerry Ortiz came out and talked to him. Not a lot of time. No evidence that Oscar knew that Joshua had a firearm. There's no evidence that he knew that Christopher had a firearm. There's no evidence that he knew Christopher would go after Jerry Ortiz, get out of the Suburban with the firearm. He didn't know that. All right. There's no evidence of that. This was not some well thought out plan. All right. There was no evidence this plan was conceived with Oscar's knowledge until it had already begun. Last minute conversation, and Oscar was hanging with the wrong crowd. He's there in the Suburban. He's overhearing it as it's happening. Let me tell you what is not your job as jurors. Filling in the multiple holes for the state's case is not your job. It is their job to prove this case to you with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. When you go back to the jury room, it's not your job to say, well, if we think about it, maybe the police could have done this or that or the other, they would have found this. No, your job as jurors is to evaluate the evidence that's presented to you. If the state's case has holes, which it has many holes, it's not your job to do their job for them, okay? The state must prove that case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. If they fail, you must vote not guilty by law. Let's talk about witnesses. Overall, during the case, I didn't have almost any objections to 90 pieces of the state's evidence. And why is that? Because regardless if it was evidence collection, manner of death, lay witness statements, videos, all of them point to Jerry Martinez killing 2 people. All of that evidence points to that. All of that evidence does not point to Oscar Martinez at all. Let's talk about the recovery of the weapons. Now, 3 guns found in the blue recycled bin. All right, guns put there by Juan Mejia. We'll talk about him in a second. One gun, the Ruger SR-40, was fully loaded at the time. 14 rounds in the magazine and 1 in the chamber. All right, that's a fully loaded gun. Now, it seems like maybe that gun was used and then somehow someone went and fully reloaded it and then it was picked up and put in the recycle bin. Is that likely? I mean, is it possible? Sure, it's possible, but why would they do that? All right. It seems like that gun was not used at all during the commission, okay? The Glock 40 caliber had 1 bullet left, meaning 14 bullets were missing from it, up to 14. All right. That gun was more than likely Christopher Mejia's gun that was eventually shot maybe once by Christopher, but then somebody else picked up that gun and kept on firing. All right. So definitely we know that gun was used for sure. The .380 caliber had 3 live rounds with an extended clip. However, we know that the shell casings, there was only one .38 .380 shell casing found at the scene. So probably that gun wasn't used all that much, if at all. I mean, sometimes the police might not find every shell casing. I think they do their best, but there wasn't a ton of shell casings like the 40 caliber shell casings. And on video, we see Juan Mejia has a gun in his hand. All right, we know he handled it. And there's shell casings at the scene. So on video, you see Juan Mejia, age 15, dressed in the black shirt, the faded blue jean shorts with holes, with the guns in his hand, putting the guns in the recycle bin. That's on the video. You see on the right-hand side is Juan Mejia, black cap, black shirt, blue jean shorts. You also see on the left side, Juan Mejia with a gun in his hand after Jerry Ortiz took off running. All right. And then, you know, Jeremy Martinez, the shirtless Jeremy Martinez, because he testified in court to you. He's 15 now, but he was 13 back then. Gunshot residue. I want to talk about gunshot residue, not because it's all that important at all, but just I want to touch on it. I don't want you thinking in the jury room that somehow it was important. It's not important. The forensic scientist, Miss, what we call her, Shopi, said everybody had GSR on their hands. Not unusual if you're having a pretty close area with 20 plus shots going off. Everybody should have GSR on their hands. All right. It makes no difference if it's one microscopic particle or 3 or 6. That's what she told us. Okay. And she used the phrase over and over again. A person may have discharged a firearm, handled a discharged firearm, or was in close proximity to a discharged firearm. And that's what we're dealing with here. With Oscar and everyone else there in the Suburban, they all had GSR. Even Christopher Mejia, okay, had GSR. Oscar was next to Joshua, the driver, who had shell casings, 4 shell casings at his feet. It's possible that Joshua, the driver, was firing through the Suburban right past Oscar, and Oscar could have had GSR put on. Remember the LeBron James powder? Well, that's flying through the Suburban. All right. It's also possible. Remember, I talked a while back. Oscar went to Christopher on video, touched him twice. You can have transference. If he had GSR on him, when he's touching him, moving him, he can get GSR on him as well. In the end, it really doesn't make any difference. Everybody should have GSR on him because they were all in close proximity to 20 shots being fired. Let's talk about Jerry Ortiz. He admits his bullets killed Christopher Mejia and Enrique Bocanegra. There is no doubt that Jerry Ortiz is the one who killed those 2 individuals. All right, no doubt. Nobody disputes that. He admits he was selling marijuana and it was illegal, and he brought his .40 caliber weapon with him that he thought was cool. All right. He admits the person he recognized from the Instagram was the driver, Joshua Mejia, not Oscar. He admits he threw his gun away after the shooting. He admits he returned to the crime scene, his home, looked out the window, still didn't cooperate with the police. He took off. All right. He only went to the police station hours later, and then still didn't tell Detective Morales anything at that point. He admits his phone was never collected by the police. He doesn't know if Oscar fired a gunshot at him. He said that. He's like, I don't know if Oscar did anything. He admits Oscar didn't tell anyone to fire at him. Jerry Ortiz does say that Joshua, the driver, told Christopher, just shoot him. All right. He admits Oscar didn't direct, command, or tell anyone to take him or take anything from him. Now, here's the problems with Jerry Ortiz. Jerry Ortiz is a mess. All right. Jerry Ortiz can barely answer questions from the state and from the defense. All right. Jerry Ortiz's perception is flawed, to say the least. We talked about the window not being rolled down, and you're going to have Jerry Ortiz's statement, and we'll talk about the window in a second. But Jerry Ortiz says he went up to the green Suburban. He looked back, and there were 5 to 6 people in the green Suburban. He said they all had guns pointing at him. Once confronted about the number of guns recovered, his answer changed. Suddenly it was, oh, well, maybe it felt or seemed like everybody was pointing guns at me. He was so sure at first every single person had a gun. And then it changed to, well, it seemed like everybody had a gun. Just perception, all right? His recollection comes from a statement he made 10 months after the shooting occurred with the district attorney's office, all right? And today, that statement is 18 months old, all right? So 10 months, if you have to remember something that happened 10 months ago, which would be roughly, I don't know, September, October, would you get every detail right? Probably not. And same with Jerry Ortiz. He's writing it the way that he recollects it. Who knows how that has changed over 10 months, and now later another 18 months. And he said when he went up to that window, guns were instantly pointed at him, and everybody yelled, "Give us what you got," or something along those lines. Give us everything you got. Let's talk a little about Jerry when he went up to the car. He says he showed up, and instantly he saw that Oscar had a long rifle pointed at his chest. He was literally this close, even closer, this close to the Suburban, and he sees a long rifle pointed at his chest. All right. Oscar is right-handed. All right. The air rifle was located in the back of the Suburban. We verified that. Air rifle found in the back. There was no clip in this air rifle. All right. And see the video. The video, it tells you so much. You got to remember in that video. Well, let's talk about this. Jerry Ortiz is lying to you. All right. At 14:27:31 seconds, and you see the 14:27:31 timestamp on the video. That's when Jerry arrives at the window. Remember what he testified to you. He said, when I got there, they all pulled guns. They all started saying, give me everything you got. All right. But if we look at the video, and you can look at the video again. Once again, Jerry said he saw Oscar with a long rifle pointed at his chest, right there. All right. Now, instinctively, when that happens, what would you do? If you go, whoa, dang, you put up your hands, you step back a second and go, geez, take it easy. Right? That's what any human being would do. See that big rifle? Whoa. That's what would happen. Jerry Ortiz told you that's what he did. All right. If you look at the video, that's not what Jerry Ortiz does. At 14, we started at 31 seconds. All right. At 14:27:33, Jerry's still talking. He hasn't raised his hands. He hasn't stepped away. At 14, I'm going to say 35 seconds, still talking. 38 seconds, still talking. 40 seconds, still talking. It's at 45 seconds where he finally throws his hands up. And it's difficult to see from that picture, but in the video, you'll see at 45 seconds, he throws his hands up. All right. 14 seconds after he showed up at that window. And I questioned him directly about it. And he was for sure telling you under oath, as soon as I got to that window, that's when they pulled the guns on me. That's when they started screaming, give us everything you got. Not true. Not true. Oscar, in describing the shooting, was talking with the detective. You can see him using his right arm. You can see him using his right hand, talking about bullets flying. You can see him drinking water with his right hand. Maybe in court, you've seen him write with his right hand. He's right-handed. All right, let's talk a little bit about the window. If, according to Jerry Ortiz, this weapon, if Oscar was there and he's right-handed, he'd have to have his right finger over here and move kind of like this towards the window. Not really comfortable. Is it possible? Sure. Not the best. Maybe if you're left-handed, that goes a little bit better. But once again, if this weapon is pointed at 1 foot away from your chest, you're going to instantly throw your hands up and just back up a sec. That's what you're going to do. Jerry Ortiz told you that's what he did. 14 seconds goes by. He's not remembering the truth correctly. He's not telling you the truth. Once again, Jerry Ortiz told you he only had 10 grams of marijuana. The police find 20 grams. He says he found a 40 caliber semi-automatic gun in Kenwood Park. Is that possible? It's possible. We'll never know for sure. But is it likely you're going to go and find a $400 to $800 semi-automatic weapon lying around in a park? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. I think Jerry is, doesn't want to say how he got a gun. He wants to kind of say, oh, it was so innocent. I just found it. The window is cracked a little bit. In his statement, which you'll have in defense exhibit number 4, maybe 3, you'll see that JO is Jerry Ortiz's initials. He talks about, this is a little thing, but he had originally wrote in a statement, the passenger window was cracked a little bit. Okay, cracked. And then he says, no, it was rolled down all the way. He made a correction, open all the way. If you look at the video, there's 3 or 4 inches of glass. Okay. He's not correct in his perception about how he views things. He also stated in his statement that he sold weed more than once. All right. This is not his first rodeo. And this is only him admitting to one time previous he's sold marijuana. But when he testified to you, he testified differently. Jerry Ortiz is also lying to you because he testified under oath to the 12 of you, the 13 of you, that he did not ask his girlfriend's younger brother, Harley, to be a lookout or to cover him or anything like that. I don't believe in coincidence, folks. Here, this kid who's maybe 8, 10 years old is coming out with a 40 caliber semi-automatic weapon. In the video, it's grainy, but you can see the kid, as you hear arguments starting to occur within view of him, he's racking the slide back. This kid is racking the slide back. And when he starts hearing more trouble, I think a gunshot starts going off, the kid goes forward, towards the area. All right? It's gated off, but he goes forward. We heard from Detective Morales that he found this kid. And the kid testified that, yeah, he was there. He had a 40 caliber, and he took a shot into the ground, allegedly. All right? Coincidences. I don't think that a kid is going to come out with a 40 caliber gun, and we know whose 40 caliber that is. That's Jerry Ortiz's mother's gun that was registered to her, registered to this house. I don't think a kid's going to come out with a 40 caliber unless he's asked to by Jerry Ortiz. All right? That goes to Jerry Ortiz's credibility. That goes to his, here he is testifying to you that, oh no, I would never do that. I would never ask a kid to do that. And Detective Morales, I mean, at least he found this kid. I think Detective Morales says, I don't know how old he is. I never found out. But here we are with a kid with a 40 caliber, directed by Jerry Ortiz. And we all know, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, that Jerry Ortiz made a deal with the district attorney's office. We'll talk more about that in a little while. Accomplice testimony. You're going to have in the jury charge language that tells you several things. When you're back there, you're going to have to read this for yourselves, all right? Or at least read it out loud to the group, all right? As the judge wrote to you, you're instructed that a conviction cannot be had upon the testimony of an accomplice witness unless the jury first believes that the accomplice witness's testimony is true and that it shows the defendant is guilty of the offense charged against him. And even then, you cannot convict unless the accomplice witness testimony is corroborated by other evidence. All right? What does that mean? It means if you listen to Jeremy Martinez up here and you go and you say, you know what? Jeremy Martinez testified. I believe Jeremy Martinez beyond a reasonable doubt, which no one should. All right? At least on certain things.
True.
I believe him beyond a reasonable doubt that Oscar was part of this aggravated robbery. All right? Even then, even if you believe it, you need further evidence before you can convict Oscar Martinez. All right? And you can't rely on Jerry Ortiz, another accomplice, to back up Jeremy Martinez, and vice versa. If you believe Jerry Ortiz, you have to believe him beyond a reasonable doubt. And even if you do believe that Oscar Martinez is guilty of aggravated robbery, you still need corroborating evidence, and it can't be Jeremy Martinez. All right? You need something else beyond that.
So Jeremy Martinez is he's not related to Oscar Martinez in any way. He's the brother of Joshua Mejia or Mejia. I can't remember how they say their last name, and the brother of Christopher, who was unalived, and Juan. His testimony was so bad. He got an immunity deal right before he testified. And it was just very clear. Again, he's 15 years old now. I think he was 13 at the time. So it's very clear he's just not telling the truth because he put everything in Oscar's hands. Oscar did everything. And then when that defense attorney asked him, well, if your brother's innocent, why is he serving 20 years? He didn't have an answer for that. So he didn't even know where he was, allegedly. I don't understand these kids. I really don't. Somebody failed them a lot. So his testimony was not credible. Jerry Ortiz barely even spoke a coherent sentence. He just kind of whispered up there. He admitted to he admitted to firing the weapon. But he was, he's not facing any charges either anymore. He wasn't credible. So for me, if I'm sitting on that jury, they're both out because I can't believe either one of them. So I understand why he's going here. He does get confused a lot about Jerry Ortiz, Oscar, Oscar Martinez, and Jeremy Martinez. He gets those names confused a lot. I don't know what his problem is.
And that's laid out on page 8, 9, and 10. It's kind of long, but read through it, and you'll know that if you go through that, there's nothing beyond either Jerry Ortiz stating Oscar was involved or Jeremy Martinez stating Oscar was involved. And we'll talk more about those two individuals in a second. So for accomplice testimony, you have to not only believe and rely on Jerry Ortiz's testimony or Jeremy Martinez beyond reasonable doubt, but you also need corroboration, and it can't be either one. All right. Oscar being there is not enough. Mere presence alone is not enough. The state brought you another witness that they want you to believe, and that's Jeremy Martinez. Jeremy, shirtless Jeremy at age 13 at the scene, said that Oscar, out of the blue this comes, we've never heard this before. Oscar had a pistol, and this was all Oscar's idea. All right. Jeremy said that the airsoft rifle, which is this, was in the back of the Suburban. And it was found in the back of the Suburban. He told you that Oscar asked for the shoes. He told you that Oscar was shooting the gun. He said, I never saw any guns in this Suburban. All right. Jeremy also said Oscar moved to the driver's seat to apparently leave or take off, which never happened. And in the videos, you'll never see Oscar inside the driver's seat trying to take off. And Oscar asked somebody, I think him or somebody else, to get rid of the guns. All right. All Oscar, of course, he, Christopher, Juan, and Joshua were all innocent. They were just completely innocent of any type of bad act. Jeremy says his brother Joshua was wrongfully convicted. He said that in so many words. All right. Jeremy says nobody from the backseat asked for anything. Jeremy says Joshua, the driver, never asked for anything, never pulled a gun. Jeremy forgets the answers he gave to prosecutors only the day before. Jeremy forgets the answers he gave to the prosecutors 10 minutes before I questioned him. We heard nothing but a lot of I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't remember, I don't remember, I don't remember. It was bizarre, to say the least. All right. So these two state witnesses contradict each other. They contradict each other. The state wants you to believe Jerry Ortiz, but they also want you to believe Jeremy Martinez at the same time. Their testimonies conflict. They don't corroborate each other. In fact, they contradict each other. So there is no corroboration that Oscar Martinez was active in this.
Maribel, I 100% believe you after what we saw on these kids testifying. It's sad. Absolutely. sad. They have no education at all. The basics aren't there. You can tell, and it's awful because I don't know how they're going to get through life. I don't know how Jerry Ortiz is going to walk down the street. That kid just doesn't know anything. It's sad. I hate that it's like that. It's awful. I hate that they think this is the way to go because it's a, like you said, fast life, and it's going to be over quickly for them if they don't quit. I don't have the answer. I think I again, this whole situation is wrong. I don't think he should be there if the rest aren't there. That's my problem with this whole thing. If they had done the rest of them, I would 100% be like, try this kid. He was there, but they didn't. And they gave him a pass, but they're not giving him one. But yeah, I believe you 100% because it's very obvious just from hearing Jeremy Martinez and Jerry Ortiz try to testify. That was hard. That's all. Also, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Aggravated robbery. Detective Morales, now SAPD, the evidence text, did not bother to fingerprint the airsoft rifle. That might have been helpful. Once again, it's not your job to do the police's job or the DA's job. They didn't provide you that evidence. They didn't provide you that evidence. Detective Morales admits they messed up the DNA analysis of evidence. He admits he never even reviewed relevant videos of the crime until.
Sorry. So you work for the fire department. Do you have to respond to these incidences then? Like what happened here? Because I can't imagine. It'd be awful to see the waste of life of those that don't survive it. And as you put it, they're clueless. And it would be very annoying and frustrating to have to try to deal with these kids that they just don't know. Because they said at one point in this that 5 rounds went into the convenience store. So the fact that nobody was hit there is amazing. The fact that there are no more than 2 people that are not here anymore, which that in itself is awful. But they missed 5 people in the convenience store with 20 rounds being fired off. It's crazy. So yeah, well, reading the reports is probably almost as bad than having to go see it. You're still living it. You're still seeing it. You know it's there. Yikes. Yeah. I appreciate you like giving your take from somebody that's there. I really appreciate that.
Till the trial started. 2.5 years later, he is now reviewing various videos. He interviews Oscar, and during that interview, Oscar tells Detective Morales, remember, this is the night of the shooting, okay? Detective Morales doesn't know Jerry Ortiz's version. He barely knows who Jerry Ortiz is at that point. He did not see the neighbor videos. He didn't see officer body cams. He doesn't know any GSR analysis. He doesn't know where the shell casings came from. He doesn't know anything about ballistics at that point. He does not know the Instagram discussion of buying marijuana between Jerry and Joshua. And what does Detective Mark Morales do? He charges everyone with capital murder. Everybody goes down for capital murder. Joshua, Juan, Jeremy, Oscar. 2 days later, Jerry gets capital murder charges. Basically, let's charge everybody. We'll figure it out later. We know that Joshua was sentenced to prison for murder. Juan is a juvenile. State didn't bring you any evidence about his case. Jeremy, juvenile, charges dismissed. Jerry Ortiz, he made a deal, charges were dismissed. Oscar, we have the jury trial right now. When Oscar is charged, the detective has no idea that Oscar allegedly had a weapon. All right, he didn't hear that until 10 months later when Jerry Ortiz is at the DA's office making a deal at the time and says, and has a motive to get the heat off of him, says it was Oscar and everybody else in that Suburban. They're the ones who did it, not me. I call that a rush to judgment. The police made a rush to judgment. We have to find out who did this so everybody gets charged. In court, Detective Morales told you specifically, this air rifle is not a deadly weapon. Not a deadly weapon. It's not a firearm. This clip wasn't even found. It's a pellet gun, a glorified pellet gun. Not a deadly weapon. The state has to prove to you in an aggravated robbery that a deadly weapon was used. That's not a deadly weapon. So if you believe Jerry Ortiz's statement that Oscar was holding this rifle, for the whole 14-second thing, but if you believe that, that's not a deadly weapon. They have to prove a deadly weapon to you. And a deadly weapon is defined in the jury charge. It means a firearm or anything that in its use or intended use is capable of causing death or serious bodily injury. We don't have that. This is the law. All right, you have to follow the law. The state did not prove to you a deadly weapon in this aggravated robbery. And if he's not guilty of aggravated robbery, which he's not, there's no deadly weapon, all right, unless you believe Jeremy Martinez's bizarre Oscar had a pistol and nobody else had anything else story, which who could believe Jeremy Martinez on that? Unless you believe Oscar had a pistol and was directing everything, that's the only way you could possibly find him guilty of aggravated robbery. But here, Jerry Ortiz is saying that somehow is a deadly weapon, a firearm. It's not. So if he's not guilty of aggravated robbery, then he cannot be found guilty of murder because no felony has occurred. All right, try to follow me with that. If you didn't do the aggravated robbery, if you're not guilty of that because the state didn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, then you can't be guilty of murder. You can't be guilty of murder. The real killer goes free. The district attorney's office dismissed charges against Jerry Ortiz. Jerry admitted his bullets killed 2 people, and the DA's office knows Jerry Ortiz is conducting a drug transaction, an illegal drug transaction, and then they go out of their way to say, we're going to let you have self-defense. The DA didn't bother to bring you Assistant District Attorney Lauren Glasscock, whose name is on that proffer document. They didn't bring her in to explain why were these charges dismissed, Ms. Glasscock. Detective Morales told you he talked to Ms. Glasscock. When I asked Detective Morales specifically, why is it that Jerry Ortiz, as a drug dealer, gets the benefit of the law for self-defense? Detective Morales could not answer that question. He did not answer that question.
5 minutes.
So the real killer goes free. Jerry Ortiz makes a deal. And the prosecutor might tell you, well, there was no agreement to dismiss. It was only a proffer agreement. Folks, let's deal with reality. When you come to the DA's office with capital murder charges in your attorney on December 15th, and your case of capital murder is dismissed on January 4th, that's a good deal. That's a sweetheart deal. It's a fantastic deal. If it wasn't for Christmas and New Year's, it might have been dismissed in 2 days.
I am having a good
So
day.
don't tell me
You are
that that's not a deal. The DA has given out immunity agreements to everyone. Jeremy Martinez got an immunity deal. And in these deals, if you mess up, if you lie in your testimony, the most you can get is a misdemeanor. That's up to a year in jail. So when you compare to 1 year in jail to capital murder charges for life in prison,
Oops.
you might want to make sure you do everything you can to get yourself a deal. Enrique Bocanegra's family deserves better. Now, the state wants to put blame on Oscar when there was a rush to judgment and everybody gets charged with capital murder, an incomplete and botched investigation, which Detective Morales told you about, and letting Jerry Ortiz, who's responsible for the death of 2 people, walk free. We talked about beyond a reasonable doubt. We talked about you would not lower the burden. You would hold the state to their burden. Even if there was a death involved, you would hold that burden to beyond a reasonable doubt. Remember, maybe something happened, probably, more likely than not, is not enough. You need to have evidence in front of you beyond a reasonable doubt before you can find anyone guilty of any offense. The presumption of innocence is listed in the jury charge. It tells you, essentially, you need evidence. And if the evidence isn't presented beyond a reasonable doubt, you must vote not guilty. Reasonable doubt is any doubt. You don't need 10 doubts, you just need 1 reasonable doubt. As jurors, you need to go in there, and if you guys should talk amongst each other, but ultimately, if your decision is like, I don't believe the state proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt, and other people do, it's all right for you to hold on and say, you know what? I'm sticking to my convictions. I'm not going to change my mind at this point. You've talked to me, I understand. I'm not going to change my mind. You don't have to change your mind. So the power of the jury is strong. You have the responsibility of holding the government to constitutional principles and its burden of proof. The state's going to talk to you after me and tell you many things, and I can't talk anymore at that point. All right, but they're going to tell you Oscar lied to Detective Morales. This kid, 19-year-old kid, was scared. He did lie a little bit to Detective Morales, no doubt. But he's going to also tell you that Oscar must have known this plan. It's common sense. That's just guessing, folks. It's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. He's going to tell you to ignore the discrepancies in Jerry Ortiz's story. Ignore the discrepancies in Jeremy Martinez's story. Don't focus on the ballistics. Just focus on, look, we have Enrique Bocanegra's death here. Somebody has to be held responsible. No, in this courthouse,
Saying that name.
justice, fairness, and the law, you need to apply the facts of the case to the law. And when you do that, you're going to find that there is not evidence that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that Oscar Martinez is guilty. The state brought you a weak case, conflicting stories from people who have every reason to make themselves look good and for Oscar to look bad. We all know that Enrique Bocanegra would be alive if it wasn't for Jerry Ortiz and his .40 caliber gun. Oscar didn't murder anyone. Oscar was waiting 2.5 years in the Bexar County jail for this day. And here he is in this trial. While Jerry Ortiz, the killer of 2 people, has gone free because the DA's office didn't prosecute him. That's not justice, folks, and that's not fair. We know, and I told you in my opening statement, this was tragic. It was preventable, and it was mind-numbingly stupid on the part of all the parties involved. Oscar Martinez is guilty of lying. He's guilty of being stupid. He's guilty of running with the wrong crowd, the Mejia brothers. All right? But for count 3, he is not guilty of aggravated robbery. They didn't prove that he had a deadly weapon, because this is not a deadly weapon. And even if the prosecutor said, well, everybody else had weapons, and he must have known about it. Really? Just because you're there and other people pull out guns, you're responsible for murder? No, folks, that's not how the law works. So count 1 and count 2, he's definitely not guilty. We know he didn't pull a trigger. He didn't do any actions that made Christopher get out of that car. He didn't do any actions that made Jerry Ortiz shoot across the street and kill Enrique Bocanegra. It's tragic, it's sad, but we're dealing with Oscar Martinez today, and the evidence is just not there. It's okay in the end to tell the state, you didn't prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's all right to do that. All right. In the end, Oscar Martinez is not guilty based on the evidence and the facts that have been presented to you. And really the lack of evidence brought to you shows that Oscar Martinez is not guilty of this charge. Once again, aggravated robbery. If this isn't a deadly weapon, they haven't proven aggravated robbery. Maybe there's some argument to be made that he's guilty of robbery because he's with the wrong crowd and he didn't stop it in time. You're not charged. You're not charged with robbery. You have 3 counts to consider: aggravated robbery and 2 for murder, 2 counts of murder. In this particular case, he is not, there's no evidence that this was a deadly weapon. All right. And if he's not guilty of aggravated robbery, he's not guilty of murder, and he's not guilty of murder. In fact, even if he was guilty of aggravated robbery, he still wouldn't be factually and with all the evidence guilty of 2 counts of murder either. Folks, Oscar's life is in your hands. We ask that you look at the evidence carefully, which I know you've been paying serious attention to every witness in this particular case. Find him not guilty, because that's what the evidence directs you to do. Thank you.
All right, State.
Again, not the best storyteller, but I think he laid out everything very well. He took everything the state tried to throw at them, and he was like, this is why this isn't true. This is why this, this is wrong. This is factually wrong. This doesn't matter. He did what he could. I don't think these kids are throwaway kids by any means, because I don't think anybody is that. I don't have a lot of hope for Jerry Ortiz and the others, especially Josh, who's in prison at a very young age, 20 years. What's he going to be like when he gets out? He's going to grow up in that environment. It'll be very hard for him to not assimilate to that way of life, because he's going to have to survive it. And then he's going to get out and bring his brothers in. I don't. My stomach's growling. I'm sorry. It's a, what? It is a, unfortunately, it is daily occurrence everywhere. When I get up in the morning, I look at Indianapolis news, and it's how many people were unalived overnight, depending on the weapon. Sometimes it's a firearm, sometimes it's a knife, and sometimes it's a car. There's a lot of hit and runs in Indianapolis, but it's every day. You just can't. I don't even read them. I just go through and it's like, all right, there was 5. And I don't know how to stop it. They want to blame the wrong thing. And I don't, I'm not trying to get into a Second Amendment, anything like that issue, but it's not an inanimate object's fault. It's the people behind it. It's the thought behind it. It's the don't care about anything behind it. It's I don't know what it is. I don't know what the answer is, but it's bad. And they're all very, very young. And it sucks. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know what this kid has waiting for him. If he can get on the right track, if this would be enough to put him on the right track, or if he just falls back into where he was. If they say, fine, you go. I agree, Sharon. Absolutely 100%. They definitely have reasonable doubt on those. He didn't do it. The person that did admitted it. And he's got nothing. I agree 100%. All right, let's hear the state's rebuttal. So far, closed captionings have been good. I won't lie. Anytime I think they're going to say Mr. Bocanegra's last name, I get nervous. But so far, closed captioning has been good. Unless I missed it. If I did, I apologize because I'll turn them off.
This case
Oops.
is about holding Oscar responsible for his actions. That's what the state's been trying to do from the beginning. We've said from the start that Oscar did not fire the gun that killed Christopher Mejia or Enrique Bocanegra. We've said that it's been Jerry. You're truthful about that. This trial has not been about who fired that gun. It's about whose actions played a role in what then led up into that gun being pulled and fired. Now, Oscar's been avoiding responsibility from the very start. The very first key piece of evidence that we have is that video, that surveillance store video that shows the robbery. Well, we know it's a robbery because Jerry's giving items up. He's taking off his shoes. He's going down to his socks. He's complying along every single step. Jerry doesn't pull out his gun to defend himself at that point because at that point, it's not safe for him to do it. He gives over the shoes, and it's only whenever Christopher Mejia gets out of that car in furtherance of the robbery that's already happening that Jerry and Chris struggle over that gun, that they both end up shooting at each other, and that Jerry hits. He begins firing at the car full of people who have just pointed firearms at him. He's trying to hide to avoid getting shot, and he runs away at the first opportunity that he gets. That's what that video shows. The other angle, it shows Oscar getting out of the front of that vehicle. If you watch it enough, you'll see Oscar gets out because he's in all red. He stands out from everybody else. Oscar spent several minutes in that car before getting out, before checking on anybody. Then you do see Juan Mejia go and throw the guns. Now, you heard a little bit from Jeremy Martinez, who was there. He says that Oscar was the one who told them to take the guns. From the start, Jerry's cooperated without a deal in place for his own immunity. That deal that was signed did not give him any immunity from prosecution. It only allowed Jerry to come into the DA's office and tell his side of the story, and for that story to not be used against him at his trial. There was no exchange. Jerry's been cooperative from the start, and he even answered on the stand, "Well, you're just here to blame others." And Jerry said no. He was just there to say what was happening. This has never been Jerry's goal from the start to blame anyone. He's just been here to say what happened. Instead, if you look at Oscar's interview that he gives with Detective Morales, it's very shortly after everything's happened. Oscar can't keep anything straight. He can't even say really why they went to that corner store. He can never once say the same thing in regards to who said what. Go listen to it. Every single time he starts a story, he says something completely different. He purposely puts himself in the back of that car, away from the passenger seat. But he didn't know that this video existed. It clearly shows Jerry going to the passenger side window, talking to whoever's in there, handing the item straight to them. Oscar knew that that's what happened in reality, but he was probably banking on the fact that there would be no video to show it. So when he finds out there is a video, he has to change his story. And he keeps changing his story all throughout the interview. He never once is straightforward as to the sequence of events. At one point, he says that Christopher saw the gun and heroically tried to stop Jerry from shooting up that car. That's not supported in the video. Oscar doesn't mention the detail where you could clearly see Jerry handing over the shoes that were later recovered from that vehicle. Oscar then tries to come up with a story that, well, it wasn't me who was a part of this deal. It was Joshua Mejia and Christopher Mejia. A 14-year-old and a 17-year-old had an idea to rob someone. And Oscar, the oldest person in that car, had no idea what was going on. He eventually tells the detective, yes, I did know. They were talking about it. That's not what he immediately says. Because he knows that by giving the full truth, by saying what actually happened, he puts himself as directly responsible for everything that played out after. He even tells the detective, I know about the law parties. He tries to tell the detective that. And he later even says, you guys are just going to try and put me in this party. Now, again, Jerry came into the DA's office and he told his story. And he got up there on that stand and he told it again. Jerry took responsibility for everything that he did, for throwing away the gun, for being the one to shoot. He owned up to it. That took a lot of courage to get up here and freely admit that. And that deal, again, he can still technically be prosecuted. If something in the future comes up, that case is still technically open. He did not get any assurances there. Almost everything Jerry says is corroborated by the evidence, by the video. You see exactly what Jerry was talking about when he gave his statement. It syncs up with almost all the video that we have. And what does Jerry say? He says that it's Oscar Martinez sitting there with a gun, cradled right here to show me. It doesn't matter what type of hand he has. All he needs is his finger on the trigger and the gun pointed that way. And Jerry hits on that detail, and he's sure to say that I was terrified. When I looked in that car, everyone had a gun pointed at me. That's probably the most pressure that Jerry has ever faced in his entire life. And he gets only a few details wrong. There's an inch or two on a window. There's one less gun that he knew. You get all those details in a snap second, few moments of getting to look at and survey the situation he finds himself in. Jerry didn't tell this to the initial detective because he was scared. He admitted that he wasn't helpful, that he didn't give any information to help work on. But again, him giving that statement, he came in and told his side of the story. Even Detective Morales said that after reading that would have changed my opinion if he had told me that from the start. If he had told me from the beginning what was happening. Because it's all supported by the video. Jerry acts at the last possible moment that he can. Christopher has a gun drawn dead on him. And at that point, Jerry knows it's either himself or Christopher. It's unfortunate that Jerry had to make that call. Jerry was not an accomplice. He didn't plan on getting robbed that day. He didn't plan on any of this happening. He just planned on finishing a drug deal. So he's not a co-actor.
I'll object to this point, Your Honor. The jury charge clearly say Jerry Ortiz is a accomplice.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the law comes from the court and you have the law in the jury charge. Does everyone understand? All right, State, you may continue.
And I want you to review that law. Was Jerry acting as an accomplice? That is something that you guys have the ability to believe or not believe. And now, there are interesting areas that Jerry's story and Jeremy's story come together. Jeremy Martinez does not like Jerry Ortiz. Jerry killed Jeremy's brother, Christopher. They have no reason to agree with one another. They have no reason to corroborate one another. Jeremy hates Jerry. And how it's corroborated is that both Jeremy and Jerry agree this was a robbery. Jerry was getting robbed. And even Oscar agrees Jerry was getting robbed. There's agreement from all parties on that. Jerry and Jeremy both say that Oscar pulled out some firearm. Oscar instead spends his entire interview pointing the finger at everyone else in that car for having a gun but himself. He wants the police to believe that a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 17-year-old had all these guns, and this 19-year-old had no idea that they had any of that he was never told, that he never had the ability to know what was going on. And that makes no sense. Jeremy even says, yes, it was Oscar that asked for the shoes. Jerry clearly in the video is giving up his shoes and talked about the fact that he just heard from that car, everyone acting together, give me this, give me that. Jerry was just trying to comply as best as he could. So again, that's another area of agreement. It's the fact that they both agree, Jerry and Jeremy agreed that it was Oscar who started the talking, Oscar who was the one communicating with Jerry. Jerry just says that after a few seconds, it just becomes overwhelming. Everyone started talking at him. Everyone started yelling from that car. But again, they were all acting together to commit the robbery. Now, Oscar had no idea that Chris would do that. Well, does that make any sense? Because defense asked you about Harley, and would it make sense if Jerry had not asked Harley to be a lookout? Well, that cuts both ways. Isn't it strange that Oscar, the 19-year-old, again, had no idea that they would be participating in a robbery and that he would not have put a gun in someone else's hand? That doesn't make sense. Again, Oscar knew exactly what was about to happen. He played a direct role in that robbery. You have that from Jerry. Oscar has spent this entire time trying to avoid the responsibility. He's been trying to keep himself away from the front passenger seat, which both Jerry and Jeremy independently say he was sitting. He tries to avoid playing any role for what Christopher, Josh, Jeremy, or Juan did, despite being the only adult in that car, the oldest person. He's riding shotgun. He's the one directly talking to Jerry whenever this is all happening. So if he had an idea that this was a robbery, like he said, where they spoke right before, then he knew exactly what was happening in that video when Jerry was giving up his shoes. He knew exactly that the goal was to get everything he had, for Jerry to give him what he had. Give me what you got. And now it's at this point that Oscar then tries to blame everyone else in that car but himself. To put a gun in everyone else's hands but his own. To say that he had no idea any of this was coming. When in reality, you have from Jerry, the victim in that case. He's directly telling you what happened. Now, the defense has been bringing up that mere presence is not enough, and it's not. Just being there is not enough. But you have one source directly putting a weapon in Oscar's hand, starting the entire robbery. Another source says he has a weapon, but it's different just slightly as to what exactly he said. And then there's Oscar saying, I had no idea any of this was happening. I had no idea what they were going to do. And I played no role. Even though he's the one that Jerry is directly talking to in that front seat passenger at that window. Oscar knew exactly what he was doing. And he knew from the start in his interview that he had to blame anyone else but himself. Why he tries to blame Jerry at first, hoping that that will cover for him and his friends. He then blames Christopher and Joshua. Christopher's dead. He can't defend himself. And Joshua's been shot. He tries to blame all the minors in that car. Even though, again, as the oldest, he has the ability to say no. He has the ability to ask where we're going. Oscar wants you to believe that none of that ever happened, that he never once thought about asking where we're going, what we're doing, none of that. Jeremy brings up Oscar's the one that directed them to hide the guns. Now, I know there are issues with Jeremy's testimony. That does match up with the video that Oscar was in that van, in that Suburban, far longer than the other people were. That corroborates what Jeremy's saying. Jeremy was upfront with his brother's involvement. The only time he didn't want to give more was because he wanted to blame Oscar. That's what Jeremy came in here to do. And Oscar earlier tried to blame the Mejias. There's only been one person who's been consistent this entire time as to the fact that it's everyone in that car's responsibility for what happened. Again, the state has proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. You have all the information. You have Oscar's own statement that does not match up with the video. You have that video directly corroborating what Jerry Ortiz said. You have video corroborating what other witnesses have said as to what happened after that call, after the shooting, and what happened after everything. The police started to get there. You have plenty more than just Jerry saying it. But again, Jerry owned up and did the right thing. He came in and was trying to tell the truth. Oscar did not fire that gun, but he directly participated in this murder, in its buildup, in the fact that it was going to happen, that something was going to happen. The state is asking that you find Oscar guilty on both counts of murder and on the count of aggravated robbery. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've
They're going to go deliberate. I'm going to go get the other video so we can hear the verdict. I don't agree with him saying because Oscar's 19 and the other guy's 17 that he's the adult. Yeah, technically he is. But if you heard Jerry Ortiz, who was 17 also at the time, testify, if you heard Jeremy Martinez testify, I can tell you just because he was 19 doesn't make him mature, doesn't make him an adult, doesn't make him in charge, doesn't make him anything other than being the passenger in that car. It is not for me, out of the question that those four brothers could have made a plan to do this and he was in the car and didn't know. They are together in, I assume, the same house. I don't know. Did they go pick him up? I don't remember if that was ever even discussed, how they got together, but it's not out of the question that he did not know that they had weapons on them. It is not out of the question that he did not know what was going to happen. I mean, that's all me. I know. That's just my opinion. And if I was sitting on that jury, that's what I would have to ask. Like, stop. For me, none of that is of the question. It's just why, just because he's 19,
Hank Wilkins for the state.
did he have to? He's now in charge of everybody. Like that, he's not their parent. I see, I have an issue with that part because he's not their parent. Hey, Bob, I agree with you 100%. I don't agree that Jerry, well, one, we didn't get to see the video, which sucks because now we don't know. That's a big missing part for what we have seen. So, but I didn't think Jerry Ortiz really put anything together for me. And Jeremy Martinez certainly didn't. Well, Bob, getting ready to do the verdict. And closed captionings are still up, so that should tell you something. It's been good. It's been a good day. Been a good day. Alrighty. Boy, they don't have anybody back in the... Again, I think this went late. The video that we just watched was 4 hours, and they took an hour and 47 minutes, give or take, of it, and then it stopped. So I don't know. I just know it took a while, which is good, which means they gave it some thoughts. Yes, absolutely. I have been so nervous anytime I know somebody's going to say his name. So far, it's been good. So far, it's not been 100% accurate, but it didn't say that. All right.
for the
here we go.
defense. And are you Mr. Martinez? All right, let's bring the jurors in.
All right, for the jury.
Judge, you freak me out every time you change your camera. Thank you, Gabby.
Everyone, please be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's the court's understanding that you've reached a verdict. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you've reached a verdict on all counts?
Yes.
And is it unanimous on all counts? All right, if you'll hand the verdict form to Deputy Laura, please. Thank you. All right, count one. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the offense of felony murder as charged in count one. Count two. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty of count two. Count three. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of aggravated robbery. Would anyone wish to have the jury polled?
The defense would request.
All right, ladies, you may be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you if this is your verdict for all counts. If it is, respond yes. If it is not, respond no. Does everyone understand? All right, so we'll start here. Is this your verdict
Yes,
to all counts?
well, that footnote two and then that one. Yeah, official, yeah.
All right, so let's do it this way. To count one, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count one?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count one? Is this your verdict to count one?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count one?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count one? Is this your verdict to count one?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count one?
Yes.
Sorry.
Is this your
Like
verdict to count one?
a record on
Is this your
scratch.
verdict to count
Like-
one? Is this your verdict to count one? Is this your verdict to count one?
Oh,
To
my
count
goodness.
two, is this your verdict to count two? Is this your verdict to count two? Is this your verdict to count two?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count two?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count two?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count two? Is this your verdict to count two?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count two?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count two? 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 Is this your verdict to count three? Is this your verdict to count three? Is this your verdict to count three?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count three?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count three?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count three? Is this your verdict to count three?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count three?
Yes.
Is this your verdict to count three? 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 All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to have Deputy Laura take you back to the jury room, and then we'll bring you back out shortly. Everyone, please rise for the jurors.
Sorry, I was trying to see. I know. I know. That's a better way to put it. Not my old 1980s record player.
All right, everyone, please be seated. All right. Oh, we're not on the record. So,
Oh, you know what happens when she
can you
says
mute us,
that?
please?
Oh, she's muting us. All right. Sorry, I'm trying to look at what I printed out for his charges. I think he was found guilty of the one unaliving that he was found guilty of was for Christopher. He was not, let me make sure. No, he was found not guilty of that. And he was found guilty for Enrique Bocanegra's unaliving. Interesting. I guess I could, if I had to, I guess I could get there because the whole situation as a whole, caused, if you're going with the prosecutor, caused Jerry to fire his weapon, which then hit Mr. Bocanegra. And I can see that. I can see that one. To me, Christopher 14, dumb decision. chose his own path at that moment. He was responsible for his own actions. And so I can agree that he was found not guilty of that. The aggravated robbery, I would have, that one, I guess. I mean, yes, we know there was a robbery happening. So I guess, yes. I just, I don't know. You guys know my problem, so I won't repeat it. Um, Also, when Judge Boyd says we're off the record, that's when all the interesting things are said. Judge Boyd, that's not very nice. Let me get to. So this jury does sentencing. So let's hear the arguments for sentencing, and then we will go to the sentence. It's like, you're just wasted your life, kid. You just wasted your life.
All right for the jury?
All of you. All of you. Horrible decisions. I thought about, we need to send her flowers that say that's what we call her courtroom. I don't know if she would appreciate that or not. I mean, we could leave the last part off, but
All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the second phase of the trial. State, do you have any opening statements?
Just a brief one, Judge.
come on, sorry.
By your decision, you are holding Oscar Martinez accountable. You're making sure that he takes responsibility for his own actions, specifically for the death of Enrique Bocanegra, for setting off this chain of events that led to 2 people dying. And now the state's aware that you found him guilty on Enriquez, but again, we want to remind that Chris also did lose his life during the course of this.
Bob.
And we're not here today without Oscar playing a role. You're going to hear from several witnesses, both from the state and the defense. You're going to hear from one of Mr. Bocanegra's family members about how his passing has affected the family. Can't speak for what you're going to hear from the defense, but what I'd ask is throughout this punishment phase that you remember the objective here is to hold Oscar accountable. Thank you.
All right, defense, any opening statements?
No, Your Honor, we'll reserve.
All right, state, call your first witness.
Your Honor, we call Amy Hildebrand.
All right, if you can raise your right hand for me, please. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up so members of the jury and the court reporter can hear. If you'll state your name for the record.
My name is Amy Hildebrand.
All right, state.
Ms. Hildebrand, can you tell the jury, how did you know Enrique?
So Enrique was my uncle. My cousins and I grew up together. We are the 3 Musketeers.
Oh,
And so, oh, sorry.
We were all born. Sorry. We were all born a month apart. So our parents, we all hung out together a lot.
And so Enrique was your mom's brother or your dad's brother?
So for clarification purposes, my grandmother has a very large family. She's one of like 10 siblings. And her sister was actually Enrique's wife. But again, she was on the younger side of the 10. So when she had kids, it was at the same time that my grandmother's kids had kids.
And what was Enrique like?
Loyal to a fault. Almost too loyal. Strong. funny, kind, and just genuinely one of the most loving people I have ever come across in my entire life.
What types of things did Enrique like to do?
When we were younger, he had a Bronco. He had an old school Bronco, and he used to take my cousin out on rides. My cousin liked to hang on to the tire of the Bronco in the back, and they used to ride up and down the driveway. Sometimes they'd take it out of the street, but he loved to do that. He loved to sit there and watch TV while we all played loteria. He loved to sit outside and watch us play football because I was the only girl on the three of us. So he would sit there and he would tell the boys to stop getting so rowdy with me, and then we'd go and we'd buy bread and we'd sit there and eat our bread and drink our coffee.
Can you tell the jury how has Enrique's loss affected your family?
We lost someone who was too good for this world. And that's the only way that I can explain him. I know that you guys have heard that bad things happen to good people. This was him. And he was innocent. He didn't deserve this. We have lost sleep over the past 2.5 years. We've lost someone who, like I said, was extremely dependable. Someone who we could count on to make us laugh, or someone who would just listen to us. We would show up randomly, and even if my cousin wasn't there, even if my aunt wasn't there, he would just hear us talk. And it just saddens me that yesterday my family didn't get to say Happy Father's Day to him. They had to say Happy Father's Day to a gravestone. They didn't get to shower him with gifts. They don't get to call him and ask him how his day went. Or tell him, Dad, I've just had a really shitty day. I need someone to talk to. We lost someone grandiose. Someone who was truly larger than life. And we've not slept because of it.
Thank you so much. I pass the witness, Your Honor.
Defense.
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. State, call your next witness.
State rest, Your Honor.
Defense, do you have any opening statements?
No opening statements, Your Honor. We called Irma Martinez.
That was sad because they are the most innocent in all of this. That sucks.
All right, could you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up so that members of the jury and the court reporter can hear. If you'll state your name for the record.
Irma Martinez.
All right, defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, Ms. Martinez. You're Irma Martinez. How are you related to Oscar?
He's my son,
Okay.
She looks
And
young.
how old is Oscar?
21.
Where has Oscar been for the past 2.5 years?
The Bear County Jail.
Ever since this shooting took place on February 21st, 2022?
Correct.
Okay. And who are these people behind Oscar here?
One of our family. And still some missing.
And is your husband here?
Dad is here. And brother. His grandparents. his aunt, his cousins.
How many siblings does Oscar have?
He also has one in heaven and two at home.
Let me ask you this. Was Oscar born in San Antonio?
Yes,
Okay. Did he go to school here in San Antonio?
yes, sir.
What high school was he attending?
He was at Por Vida Academy and he graduated. And while he was here, he also got a diploma, his GED. And I asked him, babe, why did you get your high school diploma? Why did you get a GED? You already graduated high school. We didn't even know he was going to school. He surprised us. And he just said, he wanted to do something with his time.
So while he was in jail, he got a GED
Yeah.
despite having a high school diploma. Okay. You keep in regular contact with Oscar?
I do.
Okay. Phone calls, I'm assuming?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Has Oscar ever been convicted of a felony in this state or any other?
No, sir.
If the jury assesses a sentence on the aggravated robbery charge of 10 years or less, he could be eligible potentially from the jury for probation. Do you think he would be a good candidate for probation?
Yes, I do.
And why is that?
These past 2.5 years that he's been incarcerated, he's told me multiple times that he wish he wasn't there. He was actually trying to change, he wanted to go into the service. And he was actually working on that prior to this incident. He's not a bad kid.
You were here for the trial, Ms. Martinez, correct? The whole trial?
Yes, sir.
You saw Oscar's interview with Detective Morales.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall Detective Morales saying, something about joining the service?
Correct.
Okay. What branch of the service was he looking into, or did he decide?
Initially, it was going to be Marines, but then it was Army.
If he was placed on probation, well, let me back up a second. On count one, the murder charge, it's not probation eligible. You either get 5 to 99 or life. It's a number that has to be done by the jury. But on the second one, the aggravated robbery, there's the potential for probation after he gets out of prison. Do you believe that he has the family support to, if once he gets out of prison, to be on probation, that the
Yes,
family
sir.
would help him?
He's had our support 110% all along, and he will continue.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. I'll pass the witness.
State.
Ms. Martinez, my name is Hank Wilkins. I'm one of the prosecutors here with the DA's office. If I ask you anything that you don't understand, or if I ask it in a confusing way, let me know and I'll rephrase it, okay? So, do you respect the jury's verdict in this case?
I do.
You do. You said that Oscar finished high school, right?
Correct.
And what he was thinking about joining the service, or can you tell us more about that?
He took that ABS test a few times and he had failed. So he was practicing till he was able to pass it.
Thank you, ma'am. No more questions, Your Honor.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down.
I hate when the state's like, do you respect the verdict? What's she supposed to say? Yeah, I could kind of like, oh, she said yes. I don't know what else to ask now. She's already in enough pain and turmoil. Can't say he didn't have family because he does. Sounds like his family was there. So can't say, I don't know. I don't know where this kid failed. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to blame anybody because I don't know who it is. I don't know. Just bad choices. Blame that. Youth and stupidity.
Defense,
Your Honor, we have no further witnesses. Defense would rest.
state, do you rest?
Present, Judge.
And defense, do you close?
Rest and close, Your Honor.
All right, could I have both parties approach?
Judge,
And please speak in the mic.
do so many things without us. I'm pretty sure they give. That's a timestamp I didn't write down. Good for me. All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard all the evidence that you're going to hear for this phase of the trial. I'm going to read to you what's called the charge of the court on punishment. You will receive this back with you in the jury room when you're ready to deliberate. Members of the jury, by your verdicts returned in this case, you have found the defendant, Oscar Martinez III, guilty of the offense of murder in count 1 and guilty of the offense of aggravated robbery in count 3. It is necessary that the jury assess the punishment for these offenses. You are instructed that the punishment for murder is confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice Institutional Division for life or for any term of not more than 99 years or less than 5 years. Therefore, you will assess the punishment of the defendant at life or any term of not more than 99 years or less than 5 years in count 1. You are instructed that the punishment for aggravated robbery is confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice Institutional Division for life or for any term of not more than 99 years or less than 5 years. Therefore, you will assess the punishment of the defendant at life or any term of not more than 99 years or less than 5 years in count 3. In addition to imprisonment, an individual found guilty of the offenses of murder and aggravated robbery may be punished by a fine not to exceed $10,000. And if you choose to assess a fine in addition to imprisonment, you will assess such fine and so state in your verdict in each count. If you assess a fine, it is not paid to the victim or victims, if any, but is paid into the registry of the court. With regards to count 3, the defendant in this case has applied on written sworn motion for community supervision, stating, among other things, that he has never been convicted of a felony in this or any other state. Our statute provides that where a defendant is found guilty of aggravated robbery and the jury assess the punishment of not more than 10 years, and they further find that the defendant has never been convicted of a felony in this or any other state, the jury may, within its discretion, recommend community supervision during the good behavior of the defendant. If the jury does recommend community supervision on count 3, it will be granted by the court. If there is any evidence before you that the defendant may have previously committed an offense or act of misconduct other than that for which you have convicted him, you are instructed that this evidence, if any, was admitted to assist you, if it does, in determining what sentence is appropriate in the case at hand. You may consider that evidence in assessing punishment only if you first believe, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant committed such other offense or act of misconduct, if any. In the event you have a reasonable doubt as to whether any other such offense or act of misconduct was committed, or as to whether the defendant was involved in such other offense or act of misconduct, then you will wholly disregard the evidence, if any, which may relate to any such matter. You are instructed that the defendant may testify in his own behalf if he chooses to do so. But if he elects not to do so, that fact cannot be taken by you as a circumstance against him, nor prejudice him in any way. The defendant has elected not to testify in this punishment phase of trial, and you are instructed that you cannot and must not refer or allude to that fact throughout your deliberations or take it into consideration for any purpose whatsoever. In your deliberations, you may consider evidence introduced during the guilt phase of the trial, as well as any evidence introduced at the punishment phase of the trial. Under the instructions herein given, it will not be proper for you in determining the penalty to be assessed to fix the same by lot, chance, any system of averages, or any other method than by a full fair, and free exercise of the opinion of the individual jurors under the evidence admitted before you. The length of time for which a defendant is in prison may be reduced by the award of parole. Under the law applicable in this case, the defendant will not become eligible for parole until the actual time served equals 1/2 of the sentence imposed, or 30 years, whichever is less. Eligibility for parole does not guarantee that parole will be granted. It cannot accurately be predicted how the parole law might be applied to this defendant because the application of that law will depend on decisions made by parole authorities. You may consider the existence of the parole law. You are not to consider the manner in which the parole law may be applied to this particular defendant. Suitable forms are attached hereto for your verdicts, if you should care to use the same. However, such forms are not intended to influence you in any way in arriving at your verdicts. In any event, each verdict must be unanimous, in writing, and signed by your presiding juror. Respectfully submitted, Judge Stephanie Boyd, 187 District Court, Bear County, Texas. Suitable forms are attached. State, you may proceed.
Your Honor, we reserve our time.
All right, defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for your careful and consideration of all the evidence, all the facts in this particular case. We respect your verdict, and now you have to do the punishment part, okay? Let's talk real briefly. Count 1 is the murder count, all right? You have to come up with a number between 5 to 99 or life, all right? With count 3, the aggravated robbery, because Oscar's never been convicted of a felony in this state or any other, he's eligible for probation if you give him a sentence of 10 years or less, okay? We'll talk a little bit more about that. One of the things on here that confuses jurors is about the fine. Once again, the judge told you, fine doesn't matter. The fine doesn't go to the victim's family. It doesn't go to, it goes to the state of Texas, the court in general, okay? And when you're in prison, you really don't have the money to pay for a fine, all right? So don't worry about the fine. If you want to do a fine, do a fine. If not, don't worry about it, okay? Let's talk a little bit about the facts of this particular case, all right? We know that Oscar Martinez did not pull a trigger in this particular case. You have found him responsible as being a party, okay? We understand that. And you guys have gone through days of understanding the exact circumstances of February 21st, 2022, okay? While he didn't pull the trigger, you found him responsible. But this particular murder, this aggravated robbery, or let me just say, this particular murder is not your typical murder. It's not where husband pulls out a gun, shoots his wife, kills her. That's the type of case where you're doing 40 years to life. All right. All right. A drug deal, kind of a little bit similar to our circumstances, but not exactly. You know, drug deal goes bad, somebody pulls out, shoots a gun, intentionally knowing to shoot that person and kills them. All right. That's something where, I mean, consider anywhere from 20, 30, 40, something like that. In our particular case here with Oscar, I'm going to respectfully recommend that you consider a sentence in the 5 to 10 year range. Why do I say that? Well, number one, we know that Jerry Ortiz's gun was because of Jerry Ortiz, that's why 2 people are dead. All right. I understand the concept of law of parties. You understand the concept now of law of parties. All right. You are holding Oscar accountable for his actions. All right. He has been in the Bear County Jail for 2.5 years, since February 21st of 2022. He's been doing his time. He doesn't have the ability to bond out. He's been doing his time there. Okay. But if you punish him on count 1, the murder, in the 5 to 10 year range, all right, I'm going to recommend on count 3 that you consider the 5 to 10 year range as well. Okay. Because he's also probation eligible. What does that mean? So if he does his 5 to 10 years over here, number one, he's got to do half the time before he becomes eligible for parole. So if you give him 10 years on the murder, he absolutely has to do half of that, 5 years before the parole board considers letting him out on parole. Doesn't mean it does not a guarantee, as the judge told you in the jury charge, not a guarantee he's getting out, but they start considering him for parole at that point. Okay, so let's say he gets, well, I'll just put a number out there, 10 years. All right, if he gets 10 years and after he gets out on parole, all right, then potentially if you give him probation on the aggravated robbery, he can continue to be monitored on probation. All right, that might be a situation where, not only does he get a punishment, but he also continues to be monitored. So the community can feel like, okay, he's being monitored. If he messes up, he could be revoked on his probation and go back to prison for aggravated robbery up to 10 years at that point. All right. So it kind of protects the community. And, I don't think he's going to be a problem, but we never know what the future holds. But if he's on probation, he continue to be monitored. If he messes up, then fine, he's going back to prison for the aggravated robbery. All right. So my respectful opinion to you is they should be assessing the 5 to 10 year range. You guys talk amongst yourselves, figure out what number you can come up with. Okay. Because remember, he didn't pull the trigger in this particular case. Was he hanging with the wrong crowd? Yes. Should there be consequences for that? Yeah, there should be consequences for that. But remember that Jerry Ortiz didn't get a punishment at all. He walked away from it. All right, so this is a little bit about fairness. Now, understand the law told you, and the judge told you in the previous jury charge, doesn't matter if Jerry Ortiz's case is dismissed or there was a couple of other phrases, rejected or whatever it was. That doesn't mean that Oscar can't be found guilty. Here, you're finding him accountable, but at the same time, look at the equity of it. Okay, Jerry Ortiz has walked free of this. Juan Mejia and Jeremy Martinez on their juvenile charges walked free of this. Joshua got prison time on it. All right. And we don't know about Juan Mejia, his juvenile charge. I can only imagine pretty similar to what happened with Jeremy Martinez's juvenile case. But this is the type of case where you're finding him responsible, holding him responsible, but it should be this young man who's 21 years old. He still has the ability to have a life where he's a productive member of society. Okay. He's still young. He will get out one day, hopefully, but we don't believe this type of case, and you've heard the facts and circumstances of everything over the past couple of days, doesn't merit a sentence of 20 years or 30 years or 40 or whatever the prosecution is going to ask. They're going to give you a number of what their recommendation is. I think that's just too high. Okay. So for fairness and equity, we're going to ask that you go into the 5 to 10 year range. And then on the aggravated robbery, 5 to 10 as well, but give him probation. All right. Once again, the fines, give him a fine, don't give him a fine, doesn't matter. Don't spend more than 2 minutes thinking about that. All right. Additionally, and I want to address this, Enrique Bocanegra's family, and I told you, it's a tragedy. It's tragic. It was preventable. And it was incredibly stupid on all those kids in the Green Suburban and Jerry Ortiz's part. Incredibly terrible. But here, let's remember the big picture here. Jerry Ortiz wasn't held accountable. Okay, you are holding Oscar Martinez accountable, and you should find him an appropriate punishment, a just punishment. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't mean to kill anybody. He didn't think he was gonna end up in this situation. But as adults, there are consequences in life, and we understand that, and that's what you're probably based your verdict on. Going, somebody's got to be held accountable here, and by law, you felt like he should be held accountable as a party. We understand that and respect it. But for punishment wise, we think we should be in that 5 to 10 year range. Okay. think about.
Bob, I think what his defense attorney is arguing is correct. I don't think he should get life. I'll be curious to see what I'm sure the state's going to say he needs to go away for the rest of his life. I'll be surprised if they don't, but maybe they won't. Um, However, I would sentence his haircut to life because it's awful. What is up with these bowl cuts on these kids' heads? I wish they would stop it. It seems to be a trend. It's not good. It's not good. So I would sentence his haircut to a long time to never come back. But I think what he's asking for is fair. I'm just curious what the state's going to say if they're going to go for the full, he needs life. Also, did you see the closed captionings? They were close. They were close. I think he's almost done saying this last name, and we can all breathe easy. It said, I won't say what it said because it was close. Yes. Oh, do better, YouTube. Do better. You hold us to a standard. Hold your AI to a standard.
The consequences of the other co-actors in this case. And of course, Enrique Bocanegra, tragic, absolutely. And I feel for his family. I think the Martinez family feels for his family as well. Nobody's, blowing off Enrique Bocanegra at all.
Okay.
It's a terrible thing, but Oscar had a responsibility to not hang with that crowd. He did. You've held him accountable. Fine him, give him that 5 to 10 year range. And I believe that's just. I believe that's appropriate given the facts and circumstances of this particular case. Thank you for your attention and paying attention to all the details in this particular trial.
State?
So Sharon asked what you all
As I
thought.
mentioned before,
So I'm curious of what you all think about the verdict. And I'm curious of what you guys all think his sentence should be before we hear what the state asks. And Bob, I agree with you because Jody and Gabby wouldn't survive it. They would laugh themselves until they passed away. They would just laugh themselves to death. But with the way that people are naming their kids nowadays, it's possible, Bob. It's possible.
before this trial was about responsibility. So far, you've held Oscar accountable. There's just one more step. Joshua got prison. Christopher Mejia got the ultimate sentence. He died. Doesn't matter what happens to the rest of them because Oscar was the only actual adult in that car.
I
Not the
don't
fact
like
that
argument.
Oscar should have or could have. He definitely knew. By your own verdict, you found that he was responsible. His actions played a role leading up to Enrique Bocanegra's death. He has no one else to blame but himself. Now, murder, that's 5 to 99 years your life. Ag robbery, also first degree felony, that's 5 to 99 years your life. These are 2 first degree felonies that you have found Oscar guilty of. The decision you have is whether or not probation is appropriate. Oscar gets to live the rest of his life. He is only 21. Enrique never gets that opportunity. Enrique's family never gets that opportunity to have him there. Oscar's family eventually will get to see him. That's not the same for Enrique. It's not even the same for Chris. A life was taken that day that you have held him directly accountable. Question you have is how much does that merit punishment? If he played a direct role in it happening. If as the oldest, he knew more than what he wanted to let on to the police. The fact that Oscar on some level, had an ability to stop what was happening. Judge gave you an example of a murder where it would be 5 years in Vordaer. Do you guys remember that? It was the example where it was a man euthanizing his dying wife. And Judge made a reference that said that was a 5-year murder. So what exactly is this? An innocent man minding his own business gets shot as the direct result of Oscar's actions? Of the fact that he created the situation where he lost his life? The defense asks you to be fair and equitable. That's what the state's asking for too. We're asking that you continue holding him responsible. That you continue making sure that what happened, he has to own up to it. Defense was right. We are going to ask you for a number. State's going to ask for 40 years in the Texas Department of Corrections. Oscar's actions directly led to the death of one individual who had nothing to do with any of this.
I mean, that's
You
basically
found that Oscar guilty on the fact that he started it through his ag robbery. Another person passed away. This is about holding someone responsible, holding them accountable. And that's what the state of Texas is asking you to do now by sentencing him to 40 years in the Texas Department of Corrections. Thank you.
I don't agree with that.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the deputy will take you back to the jury room. All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors.
I don't agree. I mean, 61 is not old. I'm not saying 61 is old, but he goes in at 21. He comes out at 61. He's basically done life and he won't survive outside. I don't know that he would ever reassimilate to life outside of prison if you do that to him. I agree. They cannot make this right for Enrique's family. Christopher, I know he was only 14. He made his decision. They're not holding him responsible for Christopher's decision. I do agree with that. But if I was his family, I would be upset that the guy that admitted to pulling the trigger, to firing the rounds that took in their uncle's life, is out free. I would be upset about that. But nobody asked me. All right, let me go grab the last one. We'll see what it is. I can't imagine sitting in that seat waiting for people to decide what's gonna happen to you. I still just don't like the state saying like Oscar was the ringleader of all of this and he was in charge and he could have done this, that, or the other. I don't like that. I don't know why they think that is, I mean, I don't know that they think that. It's just a good argument, I guess, they're trying to make, but I don't agree with that whole argument of he was the adult there. He was the only adult. Apparently not. So I think they deliberated an hour and a half on sentence from what I found. And hopefully we don't have to hear that last name anymore because it's getting closer. It's getting closer.
All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's the court's understanding that you've reached a verdict on punishment. Is that correct? And is it unanimous? All right, Deputy Laura. Thank you. Count one reads, we assess your punishment at 10 years in the prison, and there is no fine. Count two reads, we assess your punishment at 5 years in the prison, no fine. It also states we have not assessed a fine and we recommend that the term of confinement we have assessed be suspended and the defendant be placed on community supervision. You may have a seat. Is there anyone who wishes to have the jury poll state? Defense? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have you step to the back and I'll come and speak with you shortly. Everyone, please rise for the jurors.
Me too, Bob. Because I suspended it, so if he screws up, he can still go back. I would assume he'd
All right,
get
everyone, please be seated.
credit for his 2.5 years that he's been in.
All right, Mr. Martinez, I am going to follow the verdict for punishment that's been reached by the jurors. So in count one, the court will sentence you to 10 years in the prison, give you credit for any time served. And count two, the court is going to follow the verdict. I'm sorry, in count three, the court is going to follow the verdict of the jury. And so that the record can be clear, it was count three that the jury sentenced him to 5 years in the prison and have that sentence suspended. So in count three, the court is going to follow the juror's verdict on punishment. Court will sentence you to 5 years in prison. The court is going to suspend the 5 years. Any suggestion from either side with regards to the length of probation? All right, the court will sentence you to 5 years in the prison, suspended and probated for 8 years. The court is going to require that you immediately report to probation upon your release from prison. Do you understand? If you do not report immediately to probation upon release from prison, a motion to revoke may be filed. Do you understand? And once you're released from prison, then the court will enter conditions of probation. Any objections to the court entering conditions of probation upon release from prison? State? Defense? All right, did you review the document entitled Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Rights to Appeal with your attorney? Did you understand it and sign it? All right, because this was not a plea bargain case, you do have a right to appeal. Do you understand? If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed if you qualify for a court-appointed attorney for appellate purposes. Do you understand? Mr. DeLeon will, if your client decides to file a notice for appeal, will you be the person completing his appeal or no? Okay. All right. Is there anything else from either side with regards to sentencing? All right. So my understanding, we can go off the record. My understanding is there's victim impact statement. All right. So in this court, I require that everyone treats everyone with respect. So there are going to be some family members who probably want to say some things to you. They're going to treat you with respect, and I want you to internalize what's being said. You understand? All right. State.
I've never seen that, Bob. I don't think so. I think they would just uphold it, but not give him any more time.
It'd probably be best if they stay there for security purposes.
Why can't we see them? Are we not? Oh, it must be a minor. Guess we're not hearing it. What happened to it? That's when. All right, when they went to go do it. Huh. Well, okay. Weird. Let me go make sure I didn't miss it somewhere, but I didn't think I did. I mean, I know they went late, but surely she didn't put it on the morning docket. I don't have anything else. Weird. All right. Well, make sure it's not here. It's not there. Okay, then. Let me see. It does not say, because I just printed out those articles, so I would have it at the end here, but I haven't really read it. All right. I don't know what the victim impact statements were. I don't know who made them because this article does not say. So I did notice that, Bob. I noticed that very much. She was like, it was like the bat signal going up. Yes, Jody is very awesome. She made this overlay. She's going to move the glitter up so it's not in my hair. And I may have her make the AJ just a little smaller so it doesn't cover up people. But yep, she made that for me. Sent that to me before I started streaming today. So that was really nice of her and I really appreciate it. Jody's really awesome. So yes, Discord. I just ask that you be a subscriber. Don't have to be a paid member. We chat a lot in there about nothing. To be honest with you, we just have a good time. It's nothing bad, nothing. It's just fun. It's just basically just chatting with each other. But yeah, so check that out. That link is on my page, and that's all I got. I think I'm okay with that. I still, like I said, my thing is just still that everybody's not getting that. So I forgot what she said the time was, because he served 2.5 years already, sentenced to 10. So I don't know how long exactly he's going to have to do, but I mean, a day in prison would be too long for me. I already know I wouldn't survive. I say it all the time. So I'm not naive about that. So I do have some, if anybody's going to be around Friday, I do have some stuff, just a light stream planned. I'm still putting it together. So hopefully I can get it together. This week's been weird. I promise nothing. But I think we are going to do maybe some Judge Fleischer on Friday that I've been putting together. Some just him being funny, whatever. People being people. So nothing like super long. Yes, everyone that is celebrating the 4th of July, if you're doing it tomorrow, good, or the weekend. It's supposed to rain here tomorrow, so I'm not worried. I'm not doing anything. But yes, be safe. Enjoy the time with your family or your friends or whatever you're doing. But always, yes, be very careful with fireworks. They can be dangerous, but they can also be a lot of fun if you just do use your common sense. There was a journalist here that up in Indy that wrote an article about fireworks. And I was reading it and it was so ridiculous. I read it to my husband and he was cracking up laughing because I said, I don't know if this guy should ever get out of bed in the morning ever. Because what he says outside should look like right now, because for Indiana, you can go from June 29th through July 9th. You have certain hours that you can um, let fireworks off. And the way he was describing it, it's death, destruction, fires, um, everything that probably the original Terminator opening scene where she's like, it's the nuclear bomb going off, and where it's the end of the world. That is apparently what it should look like when I walk outside right now. That's how ridiculous this article was. But I don't know. I read it. Oh, and also the fireworks around here, when they let them off, it opens the portal to hell. Apparently, from what this journalist said, he should wrap himself in bubble wrap before he ever steps outside his door. If he ever steps outside his door, don't ever get in your car. Don't ever walk down the street. Don't ever eat, because you could choke. There's so many things that could happen to you. And obviously, stay out of the hellscape that is in Indiana from June 29th through July 9th. Yeah. Not today, Saint. I don't have any fireworks. There is no portal to hell open on my property. I don't have any. I will be inside with my dog. My neighbors are shooting theirs off Saturday. They were nice enough to tell me. So I'll be inside with my dog, who hates anything loud. And I will deal with her. I don't think that my dog having an issue should make somebody else not be able to enjoy something. So it's ridiculous. So do not do anything. I do not. I do not. I do not. They're gone. They're gone. Have not seen any. And it was a week ago Monday. We got Clyde, and Al Capone said, I'm out. Haven't seen him. Have not seen them. But I'll tell you what I did see when I was mowing. Oh, yeah, it's been nice. When I was mowing Sunday, I don't know why everything wants to be. So our backyard is fenced. Part of it is woods. It's not humongous. We've got property around it. But so at the edge of the wood line where the grass ends, I was mowing there, and there's a stump. And I looked down, and I did jump because there was a huge snake. And he was in the process of shedding his skin. So he scared me. But I'll tell you this. I made a deal with snakes in 2020, and they have held up to their end, and I've held up to my end. When I'm mowing, do not scare me. Don't make me jump. Don't startle me. Don't fall out of a tree and land on me. Don't do any of that, and I will be nice to you. So this thing, well, it's a black snake, so they're very docile. They keep the bad snakes away. They eat the mice. I didn't have an issue with it there. He looked just as like, oh crap, as I did, because he's mid shed. And the only weird thing I've ever had one of these huge black snakes do is I was mowing. So I have a 0-turn mower because we have like 4 acres to mow. And I'm just cruising along, and I look down beside me, and there is like a 6-foot black snake beside me, just cruising with me on the mower. And I was like, hey, buddy, what are you doing? And at the time, my husband said, why didn't you just, turn the mower and hit it? And I said, because I have this really weird fear that it would come out of the mower and somehow end up wrapped around my head. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to make my mower go faster. And he was, or she, I don't know what it was like, yeah, good luck. And that thing took off. We were racing. I lost. He goes in front of me and then he disappeared into the pine trees. So I told my husband, I'm not doing the trees this week. I'm not doing that. But I did go get the skin because I had to, because my oldest Dane saw it, or my second oldest Dane saw it. And then my youngest Dane was like, oh boy. And so I did have to go get it out of the yard. And I reached down to grab it, which was grossing me out a little bit. And I went to pull it. Well, it kind of rattled. She jumped, I jumped, which then I pulled it in two because it was full. It was a full thing. And I do have a video of it. I may put it up in Discord. Um, he was I laid it on the top of our porch railing because so I could see from post to post. And so he was probably at least 6 feet long. But he's fine. He just needs to stay. Our agreement. Also, I added a little stipulation to the agreement. Don't come in my yard. Stay on the edge of the woods. I don't know why you want to be back there with the dogs. Just, I am not Indiana Jones. You know, I am not. Oh, goodness. But yeah, that was my weekend. But no skunks. They're gone. All gone. Thank goodness. Grief. It was awful. So, all right, everybody, enjoy your 4th. I will be back here Friday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. We will do something, probably some Judge Fleischer. I think I've got a bunch of, well, not a bunch, but just some good people being people and Judge Fleischer being Judge Fleischer. So I'm, like I said, putting it together and see what happens. So I'll see y'all then. Be safe and enjoy your long weekend if you're getting one. So see you soon. Bye.